You'll find yourself lying on your back, knees bent, with heels directly behind the hips, so feet will be hip-width distance apart. One hand on the belly and one hand on the chest. Feel free to close your eyes here as we're going to be breathing for a few minutes. Just breathing in and out through your nose, taking a few inhales and exhales without changing anything about your resting breath. Just taking a few moments to settle in here. Next, you're going to take about 4 deep inhales into the belly hand, sending all of your breath down into the belly, moving that diaphragm further down towards your pelvis as you breathe in. Once you've done about 4 breaths like that, then you're going to breathe into the hand on your chest. This may be a little bit more difficult. You're not going to have as much movement here, but just sending about 4 breaths up into that chest hand. Continuing to breathe in and out through your nose. Next, you can shift your hands to either side of your rib cage so that you can feel your rib cage expand in 360 degrees. And now you're going to breathe into both your belly and your chest, taking really nice, full, big inhales and exhales. Just noticing how your rib cage responds. Next, we're going to practice our ribs to pelvis. So taking your front ribs and contracting your abdominal muscles so that they come closer to the top points of your pelvis. It's like doing a little mini crunch without sitting up. And then you're going to breathe while holding that contraction, both on the inhale and the exhale. We practice this movement lying down so that we remember it in all of the other movements that we do today. So after you've taken a few breaths there, you can come on up to kneeling. And when you're kneeling, you can either kneel with your feet flat against the floor, or you can tuck your toes underneath. Tucking your toes underneath tends to be more uncomfortable for some people, but it's actually really good for your feet. So I challenge you to try and do at least some of this with your toes tucked under. You're going to take your hand and you're going to place the back of your hand against your hip with your pinky facing forward. We're going to start our shoulder cars here, moving our hand back behind us, and then when your arm can't move any further behind you, it's going to naturally rotate in that socket. When you get to the front, your thumb will be facing forward, and then you're just going to repeat it, turning back until you get to the end, the beginning point. Do this about twice, and all we're doing here is noticing how the shoulder joint feels today. This is just a measurement for us. It's an assessment towards how am I going to be working with my body today. Repeat that on the other side. So the back of the hand faces the hip with the pinky facing forward. And then you're going to send your arm behind you, rotating as you go. Now remember, don't turn your torso with this. Your torso stays facing forwards. The movement all comes from the shoulders. So you're moving less than you think you would. It's less of a rotation. So you're going to do that about twice. Again, just noticing how that shoulder feels. Next, you're going to complete the same movement, but with a ball. You're going to take a ball and you're going to squeeze it in your hand. If you don't have a ball, you can use an apple, socks, whatever fits in your hand, and you're going to squeeze it really hard. This is going to activate the muscles in your arm, and then you're going to complete the same range of motion. It's going to be a little bit slower, and I want you concentrating on keeping a really straight arm and a strong arm, moving through that rotation. So this is just going to start waking up some of those muscles in this same joint articulation motion. Taking your time, again, not moving the torso in order to feel like you're getting more range of motion. This is strictly for the shoulder, and it's not a competition, so keep the movement in the shoulder. So switching hands, again, squeezing the ball, Sending your arm behind you, rotating when your arm can no longer move without a rotation, bringing it to the front, and then sending it back behind you, and we're going to do another one like that. We're squeezing the ball quite hard here so that all of the muscles in your arm are activated. This is also going to start activating some of the muscles in your back, helping to support that shoulder blade as it moves through its full range of motion. This starts to give us really strong muscles for our arm in any position. All right, so now that our shoulders are warmed up, and you can pause the video and do more if you like, you're going to come back down into that position on the ground with your heels behind your hips, feet hip-width distance apart, making sure that your ribs and your pelvis, the bottom of your ribs are tucked into your pelvis. Drawing your shoulder blades a little bit down your back. You're going to breathe in and send your arms overhead until your thumbs touch the ground, and then as you breathe out, you're going to bring your hands back alongside your hips. We're going to do this about 4 times. Keep in mind that your rib cage needs to stay glued to the floor, so keeping ribs to pelvis really helps with this, and the movement is only coming from the shoulders. So what we just did on our knees was the preparation to be able to send our arms overhead in a strong and safe fashion. And we're just doing this with our breath. So inhale, the arms move overhead, and then exhale, the arms come back down towards the hips. Keeping those ribs tucked into the pelvis. Then you're going to keep your arms overhead for about 4 breaths, not losing the form of your torso and your rib cage while your arms are overhead held in this position. Continuing to breathe in and out, and then on the next exhale, bringing your hands back down towards your hips. Again, you can do that as many times as you like. I just did 4 here to show you what the movement looks like. Next, we're going to add the legs. So this is our preparation for building dead bugs. So knees are directly above hips, and shins are parallel to the ceiling and the floor. On an exhale, you're going to send one leg out, and then on the inhale, you're going to bring it back in. The next exhale, you're going to send the opposite leg out. So making sure that everything stays at 90 degrees as much as you can, and keeping those ribs tucked into the pelvis to stabilize that whole core area. We're breathing in and out, moving with our breath, not moving faster or slower than our breath. This is going to activate everything in our abdomen, right down into our lower abdomen. It's a great exercise to learn to move safely with our breath. So you're going to do about 4 each leg. Again, you can always pause the video and do more if you like. All right, bringing your feet back down to the floor. And we're going to roll up to seated. And we're going to come into what's called bear sit. So this is essentially your legs are coming out at about a 45-degree angle, feet are flat on the floor, and if you can, you're going to hang on to your ankles, sitting up nice and tall, and we're just going to take a few breaths here. Just breathing into the space we've created in our shoulders, breathing into our full chest and abdomen, that nice 360-degree breath that we like to do. Taking a moment to pause, breathing in and out. So next we're going to work on our toes. So sitting on your bum, you're going to send one leg out front and you're going to keep one leg tucked in next to you. And you're going to practice lifting your big toe up and down about 4 or 5 times without the other toes moving. And then you're going to switch and lift the 4 other toes up and down while the big toe stays glued to the floor. You're really going to feel this one in your arch. It's a great arch strengthening exercise. Then I want you to pull up your big toe and hold it for 6 to 10 seconds, depending on what your body feels like. And then you're going to put the big toe down and pull up the other 4 toes, holding again for about 6 to 10 seconds. Then you can put that one down. Next, you're going to take something like a ball or a big heavy book or up against a chair leg, and you're going to pick up that big toe and you're going to press it down into that object for about 6 to 10 seconds again, driving that big toe into the object. The other 4 toes are on the ground. And then you're going to try and pull that big toe off of that object for about 6 to 10 seconds. So here we're just working on range of motion and flexibility within that joint during a strengthening phase. So again, you're going to drive your toe down and then you're going to try and pull it back off. So we're just going to do that about 2 or 3 times. And then you're going to switch legs. So send the other leg back out in front of you, tuck the other leg in, and then tapping that big toe about 4 times. And then tapping your other 4 toes while that big toe stays glued to the ground about 4 times. Then you're going to pull that big toe up for about 6 to 10 seconds. And then you're going to glue that big toe down and pull up the other 4 toes for 6 to 10 seconds, again working into the arch, and this sometimes will cause your calf muscles to contract as well. Taking that object, placing it under the big toe. The other 4 toes are glued to the ground. You're going to drive that big toe down for 6 to 10 seconds into the object. And then you're going to try and pull it off that object. Again for 6 to 10 seconds, whatever feels good for you. Drive it down again. Really trying to push into that ball. Crush that ball with your big toe. And then trying to pull your big toe off of that ball. All right, so that's it for toes. Again, you can do those as much as you want. We're just going to come into sitting cross-legged and just take a few deep breaths here. Allow that to settle in. And then next we're going to come into sitting in 90-90. So 90-90 is exactly what it sounds like, where each leg is at 90 degrees. So the leg behind you is at 90 degrees and the leg in front of you is at 90 degrees. It's really important to keep your chest facing forward, and we're not sitting any twisted at all. And then we're just going to sit here and breathe for a few seconds. And just noticing how our body feels in this space. You'll notice that when we switch sides, it's going to feel different. We often have one hip that feels different than the other, and that's okay. That's pretty normal. So we're just feeling into the sensations that are maybe present in our hips. So our front hip is in external rotation, and our back hip is in internal rotation. So now we're going to shift our pelvis back and forth, allowing the top head of that femur to move up in that hip joint, almost giving it a massage up in there. This might be a little bit uncomfortable. It shouldn't be painful. If any of this is painful, please stop. But we're just moving in and out of that joint, almost waking it up, if you will. So do that as much as you like, remembering to breathe throughout this whole process. And again, you can sit in 90-90 for as long as you're like. You can kind of treat it like a yin position if you want, where you could set a timer for 3, 5, 10 minutes and just hang out there. So you're going to switch sides, so send the other leg out in front. And it doesn't matter which leg you start with. Make sure that your torso is facing forward. And again, we're just going to sit in 90-90 for a few minutes here, just feeling into the sensations. Just noticing what your hips feel like on this side. Again, you're going to have each side is going to feel a little bit different. For most people, the internal rotation of that back leg will feel more uncomfortable. If you need to, you can always prop yourself up on a pillow to reduce the angle. Next, we're going to go back to rocking back and forth, allowing that top of the femur to rotate nicely in that hip joint. We're going to do that about 10 times. You can do it as much as you like. And when you're done with that, we're just going to come back into sitting cross-legged, placing our hands back on our rib cage like we did at the beginning, and taking about 5 deep breaths in that 360-degree breath, feeling our breath expand our rib cage fully in all directions, in and out through the nose. And then once you've taken a few breaths like that, placing your hands on your knees and just finishing your session with a few normal resting breaths, allowing your nervous system to settle in with the work we've done here.